So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how you can get out of the world of traditional imaging of Windows devices into a place where you can just purchase a device, ship it to your user, and they can just sign in and be productive almost straight away. So if you're new to this channel, my name's Harry Loughton. I'm a technology strategist for Microsoft, and the goal here is to really teach you technology and hopefully show you a few things that's going to help you and your organization. So today you might be in a position where getting a new device to somebody takes quite a few steps. It might be fairly manual, or you may have automated a fair amount of it through things like Configuration Manager or the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. But even if you've automated it, there's still a lot of steps where you've got to create your own custom image, add all your applications and customizations, maybe some languages, all that kind of jazz. But with that, that does add quite a lot of operational overhead. Somebody's got to manage this. This isn't a free ride, so to speak. So, you know, then if somebody actually needs a device, you have to procure it. That device gets shipped to you, maybe your IT office, whatever it might be. It already comes with an operating system. You go ahead and image it again. You probably make a few manual tweaks, then you box it up, ship it out to your end user. There's quite a few steps there. So, in the current remote world, you may not want to be going into the office, or you may not even have the option to. So, you probably have to think about how do you change the game of getting devices to your end users. And this is exactly where Windows Autopilot can really help us out. So, Windows Autopilot, we can change what I just went through, all those manual steps, for example, to a world where we purchase a device from an OEM provider. We then just ship it straight to our end user. Our end user then unboxes it, connects to Wi Fi, signs in with their corporate credentials, and then all their software, the settings, updates, features, even their user data all drops down onto that device ready for them, and they're pretty much productive straight away. So that's a world that I'm pretty excited about, and I think should hopefully help your organization as well. So before we dive too deep into Windows Autopilot, I'm going to show some demos of how to get started with it. I do want to just mention there are a couple of prerequisites that you're going to want to have to think about. And really, I'm just going to talk about the licensing side because one, you're going to need to have Azure Active Directory P1 or P2. So, however you purchase that, that's going to be what you need. You're then also going to need a mobile device management provider. So that could be things like Microsoft Intune, for example. And lastly, you're going to need a Windows 10 operating system that's 1703 and above for this to work out. So there's just a few kind of key things you need from a licensing world. And it's also worth noting there's multiple different ways that you can get Autopilot to work. We're only going to be looking at the cloud only version today. So we're not going to be, and if you're familiar with this, we're not going to be looking at hybrid AD join and how you connect your on premises to your cloud, any of that. We're just going to be looking at the cloud only. How do you get started? Get a user where they can just sign into that device, the applications drop down, and the settings. All right, so enough preamble. Let's dive in and have a look at how this looks in the console and from a virtual machine as well. All right, so I just wanted to set the scene of kind of what we're going to be following along with pretty closely. So I'm actually going to be going through most of the steps on a document that we have called Demonstrate Autopilot Deployment because I could just go through a whole load of steps and you may forget some of them. So I want you to be able to go back to this reference material if you forget any of these steps, and that's just going to be able to help you out to get to autopilot faster. So again, we're kind of going through this documentation. I have gone off the beaten track a few times potentially. So let's kind of get ourselves to where we're at. Right now, we're in a world where I've already downloaded Windows 10 Media. I've got Hyper-V installed on the laptop that I'm working on. And then I've done a couple of these initial steps. So if I just scroll down a moment, enable Hyper-V, you can just quickly do that, either in Windows features, turn it on and off, all that jazz. And then I went through this create a demo VM. So I've downloaded the eval for Windows 10. I've then renamed it as they ask for here. And then the nice thing is they actually give you all the PowerShell commands to get up with your VM. So how you start and create a demo VM, you can just use this PowerShell here, which just creates a new VM switch, creates a new VM, so on and so forth. So I've already done all of this section here. And then I've also installed Windows 10. So just went through the basic install of Windows 10, selecting United States, making sure I've got the keyboard right, language, blah, blah, blah. So I've already gone ahead and done all of that for us. And with that being said now, so we're at this point here where we've got to do capture hardware ID. So let's just roll back a moment. What is this capture hardware ID step? Well, we already mentioned that with Autopilot, what we do is we can get a device from an OEM provider shipped straight to our end users. They can sign in with their corporate credentials and away they go. But how does Autopilot, how does things like Microsoft Intune know about this device and that it's Autopilot ready, so to speak? So that's where this device ID comes into play because we can either upload this device ID manually, and that allows us to then attach what we call an autopilot profile to a device so that it knows that it's ready for autopilot, or which is probably the way you're going to do it in production, is you're going to allow your OEM provider to upload these hardware IDs for you into your Intune or whatever your MDM provider is so that you can get rocking and rolling straight away. So we're at this stage right now. Let's go ahead and actually look at getting the hardware ID now into Intune before we go any further. All right, so now we're on our virtual machine, our Windows Autopilot VM, which is running on our laptop. Let's now go ahead and play that role of the OEM provider and go ahead and get this hardware ID. So on this computer, you can see here, it's really just a very vanilla Windows 10 device, nothing on here. But we're going to just go to PowerShell. I've got an admin version of PowerShell. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy in the script that's on that documentation. And as you can see here, it's made a directory for my hardware ID. And now it's going ahead and actually installing a script on this computer. I got to hit Y for yes, but it's actually going out to that NuGet package provider and downloading it for us. So let's just wait for that to download. And there we have it. The script is run. You can see here it's gathered all the details we need for this device's serial. So if I just close down PowerShell, we can now bring up Windows Explorer. Let's just hit this PC. I'm going to go into the local disk, and we have this new folder for HWID, so hardware ID. And now it's in a CSV. You can go ahead and open it if you like. You're not going to really see too much information because it's really hashed out and it's ready for us to upload to Intune. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy this and add it onto just my normal desktop. So let's just paste it in there. And then we're going to go ahead and upload it. All right, so from the endpoint.microsoft.com portal, so I'm in the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Devices, and then we're going to choose Windows, because this is for Windows 10. And then we're going to do Windows Enrollment. And then I'm actually going to do here Devices. You can see it's got Manage Windows Autopilot Devices. This isn't an autopilot device right now, but it will be. And at the top here, we've then got these options where we can do import. And you can see at the top here, it's asking for that CSV file. Again, as I say, this is because we're doing it manually. In your world, hopefully the OEM provider will do this for you. So select a file, and we're just going to go ahead and go navigate to our documents, and then I'm going to go into YouTube, Windows Autopilot, and here's my Autopilot hardware ID CSV that we got earlier. So I'm now just going to go ahead and open that. And then you can see, I've got one row formatted correctly. Good news. And now I can just go ahead and hit import. All right, great news. We can now see that the device has been imported properly. We can see it over in notifications. We can also see here underneath Windows Autopilot devices that we have one device. Before we didn't have any. Now we've got one. We can see it's a virtual machine, manufacturer Microsoft, but there's no profile status at the moment. We've not assigned it to any actual Windows Autopilot deployment profiles. But before we go ahead and look at building any of that, there's a few things we need to do just to get prepped in this environment. So the next thing we're going to do before we get too far is we're going to reset the virtual machine. This is important because Autopilot all works from that out-of-box experience. Well, we can't really have Windows installed and logged into it. At this point, we need to go before that. So let's reset this device. And of course, in the real world, you won't have to do this because your device is going to be coming ready for them to log in for your end users. But we're going to go to settings, then we're going to go to update and security. And then from here, we're going to go to recovery and then to reset this PC and then choose get started. And then from reset this PC, we're going to just choose remove everything. We don't want to keep anything. And then we're going to choose local reinstall and then hit next. And that's going to go ahead and then reset this device. So let's just choose reset and let that go. We'll come back to this later on after it's reset. All right, so in my example, I now have the Windows Autopilot VM reset. Note this can take a long time, so I probably recommend doing some of these steps I'm about to show in the meantime, but just for my own recording, I want to get that thing reset for later on. So let's go back into the Endpoint Manager console. So there's a few things we need to do. And actually first, before we go there, I'm going to go into Active Directory. And from Azure Active Directory, you want to make sure that your company branding is set up. These are the things that people are going to see when they start signing in with their credentials. They're going to see this. So in company, we're just here, as I said, we're into Azure Active Directory, now company branding. And if you haven't set this up, just go ahead and do so. Give yourself an image in the background, a banner logo, sign-in page text, all that kind of jazz. In this video, we're not going to dive deep into this. Just want to let you know you are going to want to set up your company branding. Next thing you want to do from Mobility, MDM, and MAM, and then I'm just going to do Microsoft Intune. The next thing is you want to make sure that you have MDM user scope and the MAM user scope set up. So MDM is our mobile device management auto enrollment, and then MAM is kind of, we used to call it mobile application management. Now it's really the app Intune protection policies. But in my case, I'm just going to move this to all in all. If you're testing this and going through this in your environment, you might want to choose some and then just scope it down to an Active Directory group, for example. I'm just going to do all in all and click save. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and create a group for our Autopilot device. That way we can assign policies to it, applications, that kind of jazz. So I'm going to go back into the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console. I'm just going to go to groups and then I'm just going to do new group. And then we'll keep it as a group type security, and the group name I'll just do Autopilot Lab, for example. Easy as that. Owner, I'm just going to add myself. So it's going to do the admin, the mod admin, and then just do select. So I'm just going to keep this membership type as assigned. You could go ahead and make this dynamic. In the real world, you are going to want to make this dynamic and just say, devices that are Windows 10 or blah, blah, blah. You choose that there. And then members, I'm just going to choose this Autopilot device that we imported. So this is a serial number we saw earlier. And then I'm just going to hit select and create. So now we have ourselves a group that I can assign to things inside these next parts of our demo. All right, so now we've got that. Let's now go ahead and actually set up the Autopilot profile. All right, so we're going to go to devices, and then I'm just going to go to enroll devices. And from here, we're going to go to deployment profiles. And then this is where we can create that Windows Autopilot deployment profile that we're going to attach to the virtual machine that we rolled back earlier. So I'm now going to go to create profile and we're going to do Windows PC. It's pretty cool there that we saw HoloLens. Now I'm going to give it a name. So we're just going to call it Autopilot Lab Profile. I'm going to keep the bottom here for convert all targeted devices to no, and then we'll move forward. So let's do next. So there's quite a few different things that you could do and change in this out-of-box experience. So for example, you could do user-driven to self-deploying. In Azure AD joined, we could change it to hybrid. You can change privacy settings and so on and so forth. In our case, we're actually just going to keep this as the default because this is going to do what we need for this demonstration. But if it makes sense for you to change the language or to apply a device naming template, so for example, it'd be autopilot dash the serial number for the machine, you can go ahead and do that here as well. But we're just going to leave it as default as the Azure AD join and user driven and hit next. And now you can see here that we have to choose where are we going to assign this to. Well, we just created a group. So let's do select in groups. And then we're going to choose this autopilot lab group to be in here and do select. And then next. And now we can just review what we've done. Yep, user driven, AD joined. Yep, all good to go. Let's hit create. Okay, so now that we've got our autopilot lab profile built and it's been assigned to our group, let's go ahead and go back to devices and then go to enroll devices and then back to devices here. So we can see our device again, our virtual machine with the serial number. Let's just go ahead and choose synchronize here. And we'll come back in a bit to make sure that this profile has been assigned. All right, so great news. We now have this virtual machine has been assigned to a profile, which in this case is our Windows Autopilot profile that we just created and assigned that group to. So you need to make sure that this says assigned before you go any further. If it doesn't, then it's not going to work when you go try Windows Autopilot for the first time. So now that's done, what we're going to do is now assign an application to that same Autopilot Azure Active Directory security group. So let's go to apps, and then we're going to go to Windows 10. And then from Windows 10, I'm going to choose this Microsoft 365 apps for Windows 10. And then let's go to properties. And from here, you can see what I'm doing. I'm installing Excel, OneDrive, Outlook, so on and so forth. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to go to assignments and choose edit. And then I'm just going to add a group. And I'm going to add in this autopilot lab. Hit select. This is under required. I want to force this installation as if the user just got their device and then they're going to sign in for the first time and they're going to get all their applications or all their, in this case, Office applications deployed to them straight away. So we're going to do review. Yeah, we're happy with that. And then I'm going to do save. Okay, great. So we're now really at a point where we can test this out. We have the Windows Autopilot profile. We've assigned it to a device. We've assigned an application. Of course, you can go ahead and assign policies for security and so on and so forth, but we're not going to do that in this lab. All right, so now we're going to just go dive over to the virtual machine and see what it looks like. All right, so let's go see the user experience of Windows Autopilot. You've now gone through all the kind of administration tasks. Let's see what it looked like if that box lands in their home and they're unboxing it and signing in for the first time. So I've booted up our virtual machine. Remember, I just snapshotted it back and we reset it to be a brand new out the box kind of Windows 10 virtual machine. There is going to be a few things that mine goes through. It's going to tell you it's setting up and just wait a moment. But after that, you end up in this landing page in the out of box experience where we can see here we go, welcome to Contoso, enter your Contoso email. So this is already branded for my organization. This is why we set up all that branding in Azure Active Directory. So your users are already going to get kind of the look and feel for your organization. So all they've got to do then is just enter their corporate email address. So I'm just going to get mine pasted in here now. And then we can go ahead and hit next. And this is then going to start setting up Windows 10. So first thing I've got to do here is put in my password for us to move forward. Let's just put that in and go next again. Now, the nice thing here is that the users are going to be informed throughout kind of the stages of autopilot. So they're not just sitting there wondering what is happening. But for me, after it's done this initial part and rebooted and I've logged in, the next step for me is to set up the device for Windows Hello for Business. So I'm going to use the phone authentication, which is going to send me a text message, and then I'm going to put in the code that I get back as my additional security verification. And then from there, I've got to put in my super secure PIN that I'm going to use with this device moving forward. And then in my case, there's not really many more policies or anything else that I put in. I just had one application. So it's pretty fast. So we can just now look at the next part of this experience. And there we go. That was the user experience. We logged into Windows Hello there. We've signed into this Windows autopiloted machine. And let's have a look if everything came in. We asked for it to install the Office applications. And there we go. We got PowerPoint, Publisher, Excel. We got all the tools we need to be productive straight off the bat. And that was really it. I mean, we can dive now back to the Intune console, for example. We can go to devices, and then if we go to all devices, let's have a look. We can now see, look, we got this new device in here, managed by Intune, compliant, and enrolled by my ID. So there we are. We have one device which is now fully going to be managed by MDM. It's going to get all the corporate policies you need, and that uses productive pretty much straight off the bat. Of course, there was some more time in that I cut out from the video editing process, but hopefully that helps you get started with Windows Autopilot. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll bring more videos around Windows Autopilot in the future with things like hybrid ID join, and we'll talk about things like white glove and so on and so forth. Look forward to seeing you next time.